think a combine is a great way to gamify your practice. And when you're thinking about practicing, there's two types of practice. There's block practice and then there's random practice. The block practice is where you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Most players kind of have their 7-iron as their favorite club, or maybe an 8-iron, and that's where you're working on your technique, anything that you're working on in your golf swing, any drills that you're doing. So that's block practice, to where you're just kind of doing repetition over and over and over again. And that's where I think most golfers kind of live and hang out in. But the one thing that you want to do with a combine is you want to then kind of gamify it and say, okay, what can I do to try and see if any of the stuff that I'm working on in my golf swing actually works when I actually have to pick out a target and change golf clubs. And that's where I think most golfers really struggle. They get stuck into hitting one shot with one club. They're not changing targets. They're not changing golf clubs. And so the practice becomes quite repetitive, but the golf that you're going to play on a golf course is all random. So I think what we do as golfers is we practice as if golf is repetitive, but the game, once you get out on the golf course, is going to be all random. So having a combine where you're having to change golf clubs, change targets, and change the distance that you're having to hit those shots is a massive way to improve, and it's a massive way to improve your scores, because it really doesn't matter what you're doing on the driving range. The only thing that really matters is what you're doing when you're on the golf course, when you have a scorecard in your pocket, when you're trying to shoot a score. So a combine is a very, very effective way to help you simulate what you're going to do when you're on the golf course. I think for the average golfer, you want to start right around that 50-yard mark and then go in kind of 15-yard increments. So you can do 15, you can do 75, you could start at 75, you could go to 100. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out what yardages that aren't good for you on the golf course. But I think a lot of people just don't really know how to practice, and they're practicing things that maybe they don't need to practice. So when you're playing golf, one of the things I think is important is to take notes and figure out what shots that you're not good at, what shots that you're good at, because most golfers tend to practice what they're good at. They just go to the range and they work on the stuff that they know, they work on stuff that they're good at, but you want to try and figure out the yardages. So for a lot of players that I work with, those wedge yardages, that 50, that 75, 100, anything under around 100 yards, around 125 yards, if you're more of an elite player, those are the distances that you're really going to want to dial in. And then you're going to be looking at your short iron distances and your long iron distances. And the great thing about the combine is you're going to be hitting drivers every time you do it. But look at your golf game, look at the shots that you're hitting on the golf course, and then use the combine to say, okay, these are the areas where I really struggle. These are the yardages that I struggle. And it's going to vary and it's going to be different for every golfer. Some golfers are really good at hitting short irons, some golfers are good at hitting long irons. But if you're struggling with a specific area of your game, and a lot of players that I see really struggle with those scoring clubs, those wedge distances. So if you can dial those in, it's going to help you improve your scores and you're going to have more fun on the golf course. I think most golfers tend to just live in block practice. They're just using their favorite club. Most players, it's an 8-iron, it's a 7-iron, it's a golf club that they can control, but they're just doing drill after drill after drill after drill, swing mechanics, working on all the technique part of their golf swing. But the test for them comes when they actually get out on the golf course. Well, what we want to try and do is we want to work on your technique, and then we want to test it in practice to see if any of the things that you're working on. So let's say you're working on a drill to try and have the golf club not go so far on the outside, you're trying to work it a little bit more on the inside. It's great to go through all of the drills and all the feels that you're going to want to do. But then you need to say, okay, I've worked on my technique, let me get out of doing that, and now I'm going to go to where I'm going to choose different clubs to different yardages, and I'm changing things up, so I'm just not doing the same thing all the time. And when we do that, when you're doing a combine, you're wanting to work and not be thinking about your golf swing. You're thinking about how far you need to hit the shot, where the target is. You're not necessarily thinking about your golf swing. Take the combine, take a look at what the score is, and then say, okay, maybe I need to go back into working on my drills, working on my feels, working on my technique. Let me see if that works. Okay, now let me go back in, take the combine again, because we want to be able to see if anything that you're working on from a technique standpoint is actually helping you execute shots under pressure with a target with a specific yardage.